Okay, let's go. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I would like to introduce the beautiful sister that I met recently, this last year, actually. Her name is Ashley Nelson, and we have so many things in common about the new earth, the creatrix energies, and the wisdom that we both embody and would like to share and open that up with anyone who is open-minded, open-hearted, and ready to receive, I guess, our wisdom and sharing. And I will open up for Ashley to speak a little bit more about herself. For me, I'm Sonia Sunhart. I have a YouTube channel. I am a holistic wellness coach, Kundalini yoga teacher, Reiki master, and many different things along the way, breath work, all of the tools for transformation and for embodying more of my higher self, my soul self. And I am here as a guide and as a messenger. And I would like to share with Ashley right now about, about all of this.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you so much for, I don't know, just having, this beautiful inspiration to hold space. These are very, very confusing and, challenging times. I think we're all feeling it, and it's really beautiful to, just have these spaces where we can just speak into how would we want things to be if it weren't the way it is, because sometimes that feels good to just explore that, especially when faced with a lot of things that we kind of don't feel very aligned with. It's just a nice little shift to go into a bit of a dreamscape of how things could be. How would we like things to be if they were fully supportive of life,
Yeah.
So as Sonia mentioned, briefly, I'm an alchemist, which kind of just means that I'm a therapeutic artist. So I facilitate bringing people into getting to know like the fullness of what we are, because we're so much more than just our thinking minds. And I really believe that, the more we explore the gorgeous mystery of our own designs, the more we figure out where we belong in an ecosystem, and the more we can harmonize our life, and through us, reality gets harmonized too. So that's just a little bit about what I'm doing at this point in time.
I love that. I love the words that you're using and the flow and the movement, because really that's all we are, is energy, right? And we and we forget that in a world of physicality sometimes, and also a reality created by others that we're supposed to follow, instead of saying, hey, wait a second, what can I create in my own realm, my own world, my own universe, my one song, right? What is my song that I have to offer, and to connect with others in that space? And I love that you talked about the design that we are, because this is also something with the gene keys and like, we both love science. We're both like artists and at the same time science, because there's a point where that line of what is one thing and another kind of merges somehow and dissolves and restructures. And so this is it's not always easy to express what we feel or what we experience into words. I know that for me sometimes I write a lot, but this has been a challenge sometimes to speak and to just trust that what is going to happen is going to happen. What we need to say is going to emerge. And this is really living in the moment. This is what trusting or having faith in the unfolding of your journey happens. And it's an ongoing process, right?
Absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
really beautiful practice too to start opening ourselves to. And it's really, it's important never to be hard on ourselves too, because we come from, the whole educational, like Newtonian physics perspective, which was really about understanding reality in its matter. And it's only quite recently that we're really able to come into more of the non-matter, which is actually way more of what we are and what everything is. So I'd say sometimes this might feel foreign, or we might have resistance to considering ourselves as quantum beings. But that is actually like far closer to the truth, when we allow ourselves to just lean in and let go of sort of logical constructs of identity and just explore. So any space that invites me to explore on any theme, I'm super down. And especially a theme like this, before doing creative alchemy or expression therapy, we know each other. We got quite connected because I used to do permaculture. I was a permaculture designer. And it's funny because I feel like I still do permaculture. It's just instead of outer ecosystems, it's inner ecosystems, because I felt like it's faster this way. Let's just redesign the world from the inside out,
Yeah.
It's the same. I'm still doing permaculture.
And it's winter time, so we need to do other things during the winter.
Yeah, exactly.
In the garden, but the inner garden, yeah, that's so.
Inner garden.
That's
So
so.
speaking of inner gardens, I would like to invite us maybe just to drop in with like a deep breath and do a land acknowledgement before we open this discussion on the new world. So important to tune into our ancestors who had all those wisdom codes and really ask them to come in and guide us in this moment of redesigning and remembering ourselves and the world back to life. I love to sing the Algonquin water song, which the Algonquin women really encourage all women of the earth to learn. And it goes something like, I'll just say the syllables out loud. It's a Nibiwabo, Endayen, Aki Miskwi, Nibiwabo. And heya, 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 hey, heya, 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 hey. So it goes like, Nibiwabo, Endayen, Aki Miskwi, Nibiwabo, heya, 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 hey, heya, 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 ho, 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 ho. Nibiwabo Endayen, Aki Miskwi, Nibiwabo, heya, 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 hey, heya, 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 ho, ho, ho.
Thank you so much for that. It's true that honoring the ancestors, we're doing that in this very moment. And every time we connect to wisdom of the ancients and our future selves in this now moment, wow, it feels like such a heart medicine. And really the heart is where we need to be to create that new reality that we see and that we feel and that we know is our birthright.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's totally possible, I think it's important to feel into that possibility, to feel into that it's not like beyond our reach, and that it really comes from the inside out.
It does. And I agree with you with permaculture or these other systems. Personally, I was in a lot of that before, activism and political science and environmental studies and all these things to change the system, And it was just such a strong, strong calling to change things because I just couldn't accept the way things were with the way we're treating the land and the animals and the people, like the livelihoods, like in wanting to have a lifestyle that is connected to nature, to each other, that does so that's where permaculture and the transition movement was something I was very involved in, and it's beautiful. And when there's people need to have done a lot of healing to be able to come together and join forces in community and sharing, and that kind of high vibe reality that we embody. But we also need to do so much of that to feel comfortable and confident, and uh, yeah, not hide anything, like have that safe space, like you said before, holding space, like creating sacred space. And when you're sacred and everyone else is too, we can work together, because this is the fundamental basics that we need is from within. We then change the system naturally from without. Because if you love yourself and you take care of yourself, that will reflect in the way you love and take care of your children, your land, your business, your everything. So we can't be changing and fighting and using the same level of consciousness that created these systems and these problems. We really need to become the creators and to do the healing that's necessary. And and we're all doing that at different places in our journey, and having the compassion for where people are at, and knowing that you won't stand anymore with, like, victim or narcissism or all these different things that people are. There's no judgment. And yet when we're moving forward, we also have to be clear that we don't we can't take that with us in creating this new world. So
This is something that I love to speak into, actually. I think it comes a lot with, like, okay, so let's say you're somebody who's really interested in being part of these, like, initiators of the new world, or being part of some communal living situation. And all right, so you have to have done a certain amount of inner work, to have that ease, or to have that flexibility, to have that awareness, to be able to own your triggers. But it's hard. Sometimes it can feel kind of abstract, to even know how do you know you're ready? How do you know what kind of shadows that you personally have? How can you recognize them when they come up? And I kind of want to maybe backtrack to that space, in recognizing that, the more we, like, every major ancient teaching is like, know thyself, right?
Yeah.
And I bring it back to this whole alchemy thing and the whole expression stuff. It really, like, is a process of befriending kind of, your shadows, of befriending and welcoming. What is it? What are some major themes that, that have come up so often in struggles, or what are kind of conflicts have come up really, really often in situations that you felt you were doing so good in, and then bam, something turns around, because there's something there to be seen that's playing outside of you because it's playing out within you, So that's like a place to start sometimes, to kind of know thyself. And the beauty is, when we've identified kind of our shadows, and we hear this word, like, I'm going to use the word narcissist as an example, but we hear this word a lot, and it's a very, like, sort of demonized kind of perspective. And but the truth is, every person has some aspect of themselves that is narcissistic. And I'm going to speak into this as for any shadow. If you know yourself and you have this tendency, if it's channeled into some way that it's actually, useful, then it's, then there's no problem. There's no problem. There's
And
no
it's your gift.
villainizing anything.
It becomes
Yeah.
a gift, right? Like in the
It
gene keys.
becomes a gift, yeah. So, I guess we're speaking about an awareness that's comes from, like, a welcoming of all that, and a willingness to see it. And it often appears through someone else or through a situation. in a and often these community situations are a big, big challenge, because the last, 100 years, 50 years predominantly, we have been in a society that, for consumerism reasons, we've been really isolated as, like, individuals, that each of us have our own this, our own that. No, it's my land, my room, my lawn mower, like. So we are a little bit, like, unpracticed at this community dance. So there's a lot of, like, gentleness and patience and pausing that come with the process of creating community, I believe, at this point in time. And we both speak from experience, and we can maybe move into like sharing some of our takeaways. I formerly owned, co-owned a 20-acre piece of land, with a former partner and his family. So it was an intergenerational thing, and we wanted to be two families living on that land and have all these permaculture activities on the land and ritual and ceremony and the revival of this sacred and everything. And there was a lot of figuring out dynamics, a lot of figuring out ourselves, involved in that process. And one thing that I definitely have a takeaway from, because this dissolved because there wasn't enough compatibility in terms of the modes of operation of everyone, and a lot of the compatibility sometimes can be solved through communication, but if there isn't enough pausing, this ability to pause, when faced with something triggering, this ability to just pause for a second, just take inventory, just take a moment to like tune back into yourself. Okay, where does that feeling reside in my body? And like, what about this situation might be reminiscent of something else that I might have experienced before? Like, how does this belong to me? Like that kind of process is definitely, I think I want to speak into that as a way to kind of have an idea of what Sonia you're referring to when you're saying like, to come into community, there has to be this certain level of something. It's this active kind of practice. So I just want to kind of give like a tangible sort of feel into what that can look like, that kind of dance. And we can practice this every single day of our lives at all given moments,
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that, the sharing of the experience, and like you said, the dissolving of things and then reconstruction, because we're constantly doing that. It's like death and rebirth and death and rebirth and the phoenix rising, and and there's a point where, and this is, I think, when we're on this journey of spirituality or self-awareness, or it's really about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and even the death process itself, doing a lot of breath work or these different things where you do dissolve, but then you come back and you get comfortable with that feeling that your identity disappears, and then you recreate yourself. And because really, this is where you're the non-attachment, and like all the ancient wisdom of the ages is, the sages and they talk about, you start to see that they're always saying the same thing, really, that there is a truth, underlying truth with all of this, that our experience here as humans is to transcend even our identity, but to embrace it and to be fully in that. When your soul and your personality merge together, you're not, you don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's like you chop wood, carry water. You continue with your service while you're still breathing on this plane of reality. Like, it's not about exiting the matrix. It's about becoming one with the matrix, which is actually the mother, the matter, the template, that the biological template that we are born into, that we need air, water, fire, and we are part of these elements and elementals, and we're meant to be living with that again, like in a higher version of ourselves. We're not going back into like primitive living and hippies, and people will say, oh, you're just a hippie. But it's like, no, it's actually, the best way for us to live is to be connected to ourselves and our nature, and then with nature. And so somehow,
and if that's in your design, because like here we are, we share a similar design, right? And that too, I think it's like, I always like to speak into like not invalidating other types of realities that are unfolding simultaneously, because
yes.
they are there. And just like every aspect of what and who we are is valid
Mhm.
and beautiful and has its purpose, just as everything in an ecosystem, from the worm to, the mighty eagle, is absolutely instrumental and beautifully designed. And, a parasitic wasp is not evil. That's just its design.
Right, right.
So I also just want to acknowledge that if in your design, like knowing your own design, that's why it's so important, because as soon as we're confronted, let's say you're faced with somebody with a really different design, that's when we start being like, oh, that person's wrong and we're right and whatever, when in fact all we're looking at here is a different design.
Mhm, mhm.
So in order to kind of save a lot of conflict space from having to happen, or just, kind of mitigating potential drama when it may not be necessary, that's where like just understanding your own design is so important, and just standing by your own design, supporting your own design. Like we spoke into this the other day, like if you're a plant, this is pretend you're a plant that needs full sun, but then, oh, you absolutely want to like belong to this group, that group of plants need like partial shade, and then so you go into that patch. Well, you know what? You're going to be completely swallowed up. And next thing you know, the very like people that you thought you belonged with are the ones that become like seem to be your perpetrators, and they're drowning you, and they're taking over, and that was just maybe, truly belongs to like, oh, I didn't see my design clearly. I belong in the sun, and
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
all it is. And those plants are not bad plants. They just thrive in partial shade. So they took over.
I love that. I love the gardening analogies. They're like the best because they're so true. And it's like symbiotic relationships where you plant them together and they'll thrive. And then you plant, let's say, a tomato next to a potato and it's going to rot the roots. And so you never plant them next to each other, and you accept that, and you design your garden that way. And there is a grand design that we're part of. And this is when we trust that again, that kind of surrender, and then you're in a flow because you're in your design, but you're honoring everybody else's
Yeah.
uniqueness and their essence, and there's no competition anymore. It's just some people are not at the right place at that moment, and they need to discover that, and then hopefully they can get themselves out before they actually, because this is what happens too. Some people come into
Trial and error.
yeah.
Trial
And
and
some,
error.
the density for some people here, if you're from other planets where it's a lot less dense, for example, and you come in and like, which I think with the star seed thing, I do believe that perhaps we have memories from other, higher planes of dimensional realities and things like that. And we come into this density and we're like, oh my God, this whole carbon base, and it's been very dense, I feel. And now we're lifting. So this is the whole ascension and the crystallization of our transformation as we're compressed, just like a diamond, like, or the caterpillar that turns it. I had this conversation this morning with another one of my amazing sisters in this journey that I love and appreciate so much for her own unique wisdom. And it's just so beautiful when you live in that world, really, where everybody has their place, and you feel like you have your place. And so you're comfortable in your own skin, you're comfortable when you go into different groups, and
Yeah.
because you are who you are, and you have nothing to hide. Like it's like this transparency, or this which we're going also as
Mhm.
we're evolving, more telepathic, more like sensing people's auric fields and energies. And so we just need to align more and more with that, I believe, with
Yeah, with that deep knowing of self, and like just aligning with this like genuine desire to understand who we are, what gifts might we have. Like you speak of telepathy, or being able to see auric fields, or things of that nature. Like for so long also we have had resistance in even considering these things legitimately in each other, or even exploring them if you are someone who's experiencing some kind of something like that, like rather than suppress it or no, to just allow, like let's deconstruct like what we think is sane. Somebody the other day said the word insane. And I thought, oh, like you're insanity, like you're insanity.
Yes.
Not like, because it's almost as if as soon as you come back to a certain level of sanity,
You get
you're
called.
seen as insane. I was like, oh, that is so interesting. Because, yeah, and that too, in the process of awakening, in the process of like stepping into like some greater truth, there's those moments. I've had these moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm one of those people now, one of those people. And that's part of it too, and you embrace it and you welcome it and you just let it happen. And
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If it, because it's going to bring you more and more joy and more a higher vibrational state. So you don't want to go back to,
you can't.
you can't.
You can't
Exactly.
really. It's like
Yeah,
that's the
you're right.
thing. Like when
Once
you're really seeing, it's like
yeah,
it's very difficult to unsee. So you kind of need to
yes.
keep going forward. So I think we're touching on like le nerf de la guerre here in terms of like maybe one foundational thing we can pull out of like, we're just gonna brainstorm on like what would be really amazing as some foundation pieces for a new paradigm.
Yes.
Know thyself, and know thyself in gentleness and without judgment. Just know thyself to know thyself, to know, so others can see, oh, this is a creature that needs light, and this is a creature that's like does this, that, and whatever. Where it's clear, it's obvious for you, and it's obvious for others, so we can all position each other well. And if you're in the process of discovering that, then we can be transparent about that. We can be very tolerant for people because we all are kind of like poking around in the dark here, right? We're bumping up against things and we're figuring it out as we go along. It's all trial and error. Like somebody who accidentally puts a potato next to a tomato probably did so with like such a great intention, and then it was like, oh my God, what have I done? Like not knowing. They have a lot of that spaciousness and a lot of patience and gentleness towards ourselves really allows us to also have that for others.
Yes.
Like we're all bumping along here in the
Walking
dark. So
or dancing each other home because but it's true, there's a point where it's like you speak another language almost, that that only when you're able to hear that music or that language can you actually participate in that creative lifestyle and share it and have just be joyful and know that you're this energetic being. And that's the thing, we're spiraling into this other, and this is, I love prophecy. I love to, it gives me a lot of strength and courage because I align with these higher timelines of prophecy that speak about the heart, which is the fourth chakra, the fourth dimension, and then the bridge into the higher realms, into the higher dimensions. And we know that that's it, with the imagination, the pineal gland, when that opens, the whole world opens, where beyond limitations, beyond what we've always known. And so we're experiencing that collectively in our own realities, in our own way. And we can share that and say, oh, that I don't see it that way, or I didn't experience that, but wow, now I have this information, that because that too, we are information. We are part of this collective consciousness, the cloud that is downloadable. Everything exists. We just have to tune in to it and choose really what. Once we know that this is what we are, we get to choose. And we're getting to that stage where like, okay, wow, how can we create together this and this is what we're doing right now in this moment. We are co-creating a moment in space-time of sharing information, and then we can build it on the ground if if we feel that calling, or we can build it in our families or the schools, or like you said, there's so many ways that we are, but we're and in the health system, and oh my God, like everything is,
up
it's
for
almost,
grabs.
yeah. It's like the Renaissance, or after the contraction we have the expansion, right? So we've been in this contractive mode, and it's been very intense, and it's still, but as we come out of that, just like springtime, as it starts to burst forth, like if there's one thing to have is the faith that the nature will take over and bloom again and blossom again. And if we have that in ourselves and we trust that, like we're always living in harmony and in and yes, we might
Or at
have.
least we know how to harmonize,
Yes.
because everything's like, even a plant in an ideal ecosystem is going to face a storm every so often, or like too much rain or too much wind or whatever it might be, not enough water, and then it's dry. Like, but it's to bounce back, to know how to have that flexibility. And yeah, I think this brings me into highlighting maybe the second thing that we can bring as a pillar into this is the focus piece. It's like, energy flows where focus goes, kind of thing.
Oh my God, I say that all the time, almost all my videos, because it's like, it's the ultimate truth. Energy flows where attention or intention goes, for sure, for sure. So
Yeah, so
yeah.
there's the whole piece of like, that willing, gentle openness to know ourselves, and to not like feel, not to feed into the urge to blame, shame, or but just stay here and understand this and communicate this to the best of your ability, and humbly poke around and whatnot, and keep in the focus, keep in our focus, like what is beautiful, what is inspiring, what can we look forward to, like what beautiful things are already emerging presently because of the ongoing contraction. Because for every force there is an equal opposing force. It's just that we don't hear about that positive force all that much. It's just not part of the general narrative right now, but it's there nonetheless.
And it's like the mushroom all underground, like it's all connected, and all of a sudden they start popping up, and it's like, oh my God, where I didn't know that was, oh yeah, it's underground.
They're everywhere.
It's everywhere, and it's all connected, and it pops up. And this is also what's happening. I love that, because it's like emerging out of the darkness, and it's all interconnected. So wow, to be alive and experiencing these times is like, well, we all signed up for this, even though we forget. But here
Yeah,
we
and
are.
it still can be pretty like, even if
Yeah.
like some part of you knows you signed up for it, it's still like you're still like, oh my gosh, how do we
Yeah, there's
navigate
moments
this
you're like,
gracefully?
where can I go back to my other planet? I think I made a mistake or this. It's like, but then it's like, okay, no, you're here for this human experience, and for as long as whatever is supposed to be. And that's the thing, is you accept that too, that you can live a beautiful, healthy life if you have the lifestyle, and you bring awareness into like your divinity, your sacredness, your sovereignty, all these things that make your life so beautiful. Every day, it's doesn't have to be always, so it's like
This chimes me into like one of my favorite topics, sometimes in the beautiful, like with the beautiful souls that I serve, is turn-ons. What turns you on? That is such an important thing to like pinpoint in getting to know yourself, in what to focus on. Where we're checking both of those off in this idea of turn on, like a turn on, but like really inviting people to consider what turns you on, but like through the entire sensory system. Like what kind of smells, what's eye candy to you, what kind of sounds, like what kind of sensations, and like how can you just surround yourself with all of that? What if you imagined a life where that's all you wake up to all of your turn-ons, and your day is just filled with turn-ons? Like what does that look like? What does that look like to you? And that's such a huge thing to hold and to actually activate around you, and it activates your life force energy. This is what fuels that life force energy, which fuels our creativity, our imagination, so we can imagine even more things that turn us on. And what does that do? It just gives us more energy. It gives us more of this momentum that we need to kind of lift this sort of frequency out of this blank frequency of victimization and fear and
disease. like not,
Deception, dis-ease, discomfort, all the disses.
yeah, all the this, no more this. And we're not saying you should either, like, 'cause it's like, it's more about embracing your essence. And yes, what turns you on, what gives you, and that could be many things. Like I'm, like we talked about, I'm Pisces, I love so many things, and I'm not really good at just one thing, I'm really good at many things, but the expertise that some people are funneling in one specific thing, some of us are doing many different things and expressing in different ways. And I just think that that's the best thing to be doing, is expressing. So I love, if you have a chance, go check out Ashley's website. It's absolutely beautiful. It's an expression of her, it's colorful, it's got movement, and it's magical, just like you are. And and I just, for me, it's inspiring to, that's the thing, I need my own people around to inspire me, and then I hopefully inspire others, and this way we're all kind of lighting each other up, right? And
That's the magic of the turn on thing, is that
yes,
when you're freaking turned on, what happens, right? That creates harmonization in your being. What
yeah,
happens when you have harmonization in your being? It's basically, from a physics perspective, from a quantum physics perspective, from a scientific perspective, you have your brainwave patterns that are syncing up with your heart wave patterns, and then this energy field is sent off your body like it's such a distance. When you're harmonized, then you magnetize all this cool stuff to you, and not only do you magnetize things that are equivalent to that beautiful harmonized turned on state that you're in, but your presence, this emanation, this magnetic electric emanation coming off of you, anybody who walks into that field gets activated,
yeah,
remembers it in themselves.
oh
It
yeah.
kind of gives them this roadmap as to oh wait.
Everything is tingling right now. Like when the truth comes, this is how I know. Like I get full body, like shivers, and my whole Kundalini starts going up and down my spine. Everything is like moving in excitement, because it's like, yes. That
You see it as an activation,
yes,
and as I'm speaking, I'm feeling it all out in here, right? And then she's picking it up there, and now it's being received in her key, her key chakras that she's most sensitive in, and that's your beautiful design, that's your genius. So how are you receiving it? Whoever you beautiful person is out there that's tuning in, how are you receiving this little activating, spiraling into the turn-ons kind of talk? Do you feel it in your body? Where is it? And this tells us so much about the more each of us embody, the more turned on we are, the more we emanate some really deep truth about our creatrix life force energy.
yeah.
If each of us are a piece of the whole, and the more we embody ourselves, the whole gets to remember itself through us, then, as we see each other in wholeness, in some form of activation, when we remember that piece, that what that person is, we remember it in ourselves.
And we don't have to speak, like you said, it's energy, and it's a field. And this is what the ancients and unfortunately, a lot of gurus and priests and people that were really tapped into that were using it as their power and influence and all of that for their own. And they've had to learn those lessons. But we're in an age now where also the feminine is stepping up and taking her rightful place, and all of that. That's also part of the feminine energies, right? But the merge of the two is where we become whole, holy, and complete.
Yes,
The feminine is the mother, is the matrix. And what you talked about, the sensuality of living your experience, instead of suppressing and saying, and pushing away anything that has to do with sensuality or the woman, or, so finally we're ending that cycle of patriarchal domination. And this is why these old systems that were created in a time of where that was the norm, they don't work anymore. And everybody knows it, but I'm seeing it from this lens of the feminine rightfully taking her place. And we're seeing it in movies, we're seeing it's in the archetypal imagination of all of us. And so it's beautiful that, and I'm a mother of 3 daughters as well, and I hope that it gets, you know, better and easier and all that for their lives to take this like strong feminine, divine feminine, sensual, and just to embrace it and to be aligned with the mother, the matrix, the, you know, because the escaping the matrix or getting rid of that is, we're not going to escape. This is when we go to our next octave or level with the mother, because we're ascending with the whatever this is, if it's a holographic reality, if it's a plane of dimension that we talked about, we don't really know. I mean, I don't think anybody does. Even the top scientists in the world are still debating all this, and the spiritualists. But what we know is that we are creator beings. We are made in the image of the creator, the creatrix, and we can definitely play and dance and create in that environment. And it's exciting, and we meet others, beautiful souls that we can dance with for a little while, a long while, whatever, but we're here to explore that. And I invite everybody who's watching this to do that, to contact Ashley or myself. I have a coaching 90-day program, and I also have a breathwork MP4 that you can download for ascension and crystallization and really healing through the DNA. And it's a 1 hour long, so you can check that out on my website. And still creating more programs, more transformational tools. Ashley, do you want to say something about this, if we're wrapping up our sessions?
Wrapping up. Well, there's two things that like your last bit of sharing like really highlighted for me that I want to kind of just bring up, because it's some information that I've come across over the last couple of years that I just love to share. And Laura Storm, who's an author and a leader in the world of like influencing huge businesses to adopt like life affirming business practices, really taking like, you know, what nature does and transposing it into different kind of business models. She wrote a beautiful book with her partner called Regenerative Leadership. And in this book, they actually have like a very beautiful take on how we got to where we are right now. And it addresses this masculine, feminine, and the imbalance that we're currently experiencing. And I always like to have an opportunity to like just speak into what I read in this book, because it really helped me, you know, understand how we got to where we are without it being charged, without having a charge about it. So 500 years ago, we backtrack, and even before that, let's backtrack even further. You know, the history of humanity as a species on this planet, we've mostly lived in quite a harmonious way with nature. And then we go back about 500 years and we experience, you know, for the first time, a huge drop in temperature, global temperature on the planet. Like, I think it's like 10 degrees, the whole planet for 100 years. By then, or you know, we were more sedentary, doing agriculture, and everything was being distributed through the waterways and so on. So this drop in temperature like froze over the waterways, and this was like really traumatic for our species. It was kind of the first time we felt like nature had turned against us. And prior to this incident, there was always this reference across all different cultures. Everywhere on the globe, there was this reference of the sky god and the earth goddess. So the female associated to nature and the masculine associated to the sky. So that's kind of where it all began, the great separation between the masculine and the feminine. So it's not like there's this overarching they, or this overarching like group of men that are trying to like something. This came straight out. This is where all the fear came from. Where all of a sudden these ideas of like the feminine, women being chaotic, uncontrollable, unpredictable, like irrational, just come from the sort of trauma of experiencing this mini ice age. And so what was the reflex? It was like, we want to understand and like dominate nature. So out of this desire to protect ourselves and to have some level of control over the conditions of our livelihood, there was the age of enlightenment that came through, which is great. But also there was the burning times. So out of the last 500 years, there's 300 of those years where women were literally burnt at the stake in public places in front of children, for 300 years for having any kind of like sort of a connection to nature and so on. And what we've been seeing ever since is just basically this echo of trying to cancel out the feminine. And that's what is happening with the herbicides in the soil, killing all the soil fertility, which is the feminine aspect of the soil. And without the soil fertility, then what's happening? We have fruits, vegetables that don't have their healing properties, don't have their nutrient content like they used to, canceling out the feminine there. We have waterways and our airways that are all polluted and toxic, and like the whole planet's kind of become a bit of a dumping ground. And that's just what, this is an experimentation that humanity as a species just needed to go all the way into.
Yeah.
And out of just a desire to be safe and to try and control and predict everything, which is very, very masculine. And those can be really, really beautiful qualities, but it's just that those qualities are really beautiful when they're paired with the feminine, life-giving, nurturing, healing energies. So I don't know so much that the feminine's like reclaiming their place or that we're given space, but just that if there's just we just put ourselves in such a dire situation of mass extinctions, and like, we're kind of all of us in an extractive system that's just not supportive of life, that it's almost as if the feminine is welcome to step up at this moment, because we've kind of taken it as far as we can with the masculine, and it's definitely not working, and even, so there's the reconciliation of the masculine and feminine is kind of what I feel this particular new paradigm, the transitional phase towards this new paradigm is going to be a lot about that, and not so much about like, putting our stakes down as women, because then we'll just be doing the flip side thing.
Oh yeah, no, that's not.
To understand that, to like basically just to bring this back into balance as quickly as we can, we got to reconcile those forces within us.
Yes.
Or reconcile that relationship with us.
That's true, but I have to say that being a spiritual like leader or teacher, that kind of thing, when maybe it's a generational thing as well, and I believe that it's getting better, and but I do believe that men have to be really willing to stand side by side and not to continue certain patterns that that, because you'll have, and that they know more, they know like I've had a lot of these experiences, and and so they'll just dominate the space with and like they're not, so there is something about the councils in the indigenous tribes, and that that it's the women as a collective, and then yes, the men will speak with the women and things like that. So depending on where we're getting our information as well, like I think there's many
that's what I'm feeling about the part of the reconciliation, is to recognize the strengths of each clan, like the actual, like if you look at horses, I love taking horses as an example. Oftentimes we don't know that there's a dominant female horse.
Okay.
There's a dominant male, and then there's a dominant female, and then all the other females that are in the clan, and they all have a certain order, and it's the dominant female that decides where they go.
Okay.
But it's the dominant male that opens the way.
Okay.
So this is a super good example of like what is more of a natural dynamic. And the same thing with wolves. You see the same thing. Like look at a pride of lions. It's like the women are hunting. They're the ones say like it's. But it's not to say that they're more powerful or less or whatever. But it's to say that we need each other.
But the males will fight each other to dominate one clan and have their own, reproduction. And there is in nature whether it's dolphins or lions, or like there's where they fight, and the strongest one, and so it keeps the clan stronger and all of that. But we are intelligent beings that we can make choices using, like they're intelligent as well. It's a different intelligence, but I'm saying like just that it's really a conditioning. It's like we grew up with this paradigm, this old reality, and so they did, and their fathers and their grandfathers, just like our mothers and grandmothers. So when I talk about it's claiming our voice and our wisdom, and taking up that space and not being afraid of it, because there's still so many women that are not able to do that. And, you know, this is where, yeah, the men have to like be able to leave that space open so that, and I think that that is a process. And yeah, we're in that healing, and
We're in it. We're in it.
we're,
That's the
we're
beautiful
in it.
thing. I
Yes.
can speak from my side of things. Like I'm launching this month, the month of spring. On Spring Day, I'm having my first women's circle called Temple of Muses, and it's about reclaiming, you know, a lot of that beautiful yin like wisdom within us. It's about, you know, being with other women and shedding these shadows of jealousy, the shadows of competition, the shadows of comparison, and really allowing ourselves to, like, you know, experience how effing magical we are and how inspiring we are. That's the muse archetype. And then I have a monthly circle for men called Protectors of Life. And it's really like a process in which the men actually get to, you know, be held in a very unconditional yin field of love. And that allows them to tune into their own feminine within them and heal a lot of things. And like that, the men's group coming up is booked. So it's happening. Like most of the people who come and do some of this alchemy work are men right now.
That's
And really
amazing.
coming towards me for this yin healing, to
This is
welcome. Yeah, it's beautiful. There's this reconciliation. It's happening like now. It's
yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
So
Woo!
very
This
exciting.
is where it gets super exciting. Listen, Ashley, I actually have another call in where I just realized we've been on for like an hour. We could, again, if you guys love this conversation, we will continue. I think this is so happening right now, like you said, Ashley, and we're both able to take our information, but also see where it's converging, or, you know, and saying, wow, this is really happening. And so sharing that excitement and that these revelations of who we are, what we are, these energy, amazing, beautiful, you know, balanced energetic beings, masculine, feminine within, merging, and then another masculine and feminine. I mean, wow, we are becoming, as Joe Dispenza says, you know, supernatural humans. We really are. So it's exciting. And we're going to focus on everything that brings us into that empowerment place as women, as men, as, you know, souls that actually have no sex at all. And
Also.
yes, and but we are humans. So this conversation. So thank you so much. Thank you, Ashley, for sharing. This has been, I feel vibrant. I feel electrified, and I hope that we can do this very soon again, and we'll share this, and we're both, you know, reachable. So yeah.
Mhm.
So
Thanks for tuning in,
cheers.
whoever's out there.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Mm.
Bye.
Bye.